Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new deck profile. Brand new, I mean, it's not brand new, you guys have already seen my Monarch list, and in this particular list, I decided to get rid of the Lair of Darkness. Don't get me wrong, Lair of Darkness is a strong spell, but it isn't as strong as Domain, because Domain is a floodgate, whereas Lair of Darkness is a threat. You know, there's a difference between like a floodgate and a threat. Like a threat card basically means, oh, if this card is face up on the field, my opponent can interact with my board by attributing my cards for the costs and etc. and just basically like break my board. But I think Lair of Darkness is a much more suited card for going second, just because like you can like Lair of Darkness, normal summon a Rima, and then like tribute one of your opponent's monsters, such our Diablos. That's sort of like the scenario where Lair of Darkness is a little bit better. In this particular list, we are aiming to go first and establish our domain lock, stopping our opponent from either summoning from the extra deck or just summoning in general with Vanity's Fiend. And then we have the complementary Darkest Diablos, because this card is able to recur itself from the graveyard, can rip a card out of our opponent's hand, and also it's a really big beat stick that cannot be targeted or attributed, so it just adds a bunch of damage to our Monarchs for free, and it helps us to seal games much faster, since the game just lost a bunch of its ability, a lot of the ability to grind out your opponent, since we don't have access to 3 Stormforth and 3 Pantheism and 3 Aether, so you have to basically time your things correctly to deal with the current situation. Another big change that I made to the list was the addition of 1-for-1 instead of Upstart Goblin, just because 1-for-1 is a really good card going second, since it allows you to pull off OTKs where if you didn't have this card, you'd not be able to. I think the combo is basically like 1-for-1 and Erebus gets you for the most part there, like 1-for-1 and Aether. It's something related with 1-for-1 and like a few cards. It's like a 2-3 card combo, but it's pretty easy to pull off, since like a lot of the cards are just like very accessible. And the other notable change that I made to the deck was the addition of de-escalation, just because escalation, allowing you to tribute on your opponent's turn, makes it really appealing to run with Erebus, since you can recur this on your opponent's turn, because it's once per turn during other player's turn. You can discard a Monarch spell trap card and add this, and then with escalation, you can basically like immediately tribute summon on your opponent's turn and spin a card that they control back into the deck. So if they summon something threatening, like let's say Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, which was previously a really bad matchup for this deck, now becomes really easy. Now I think I've talked about the deck enough, like the changes and stuff, so I just want to show you what the deck is able to play. So I'm going to show you the worst replay that I got. I mean, I could have gotten more replays, but this basically showcases like the two things that I want to highlight about the deck. The first is the resilience that the deck has. Now, this hand is pretty booty. I mean, like, yes, the hand is good. Like, you can summon Kaiser Voss Raider. You can then like normal summon Idea, get an Eidos, Erebus, yada. But the problem is that we only drew into one spell, and it's our main Floodgate. Now, that's a good spell in general, but we are playing on we are going second, and our opponent has 4 back row. So now, I think my opponent makes a big mistake by just blind, like, as soon as I special summon the Kaiser Voss Raider, which I think is the correct play, because it's 1900 bigger than any other Trickstar monster that your opponent, Trickstars play, unless they're going to scapegoat and then have something else to go off of. You immediately want to get your quote-unquote Cyber Dragon onto the field to just constantly beat over their things, and this guy is going to grow hugely when it does so. And then I immediately activate the domain, and my opponent just reacts with Cosmic Cycle, but that's fine because I have Idea. Now, the thing that happens here, this became a gamble where I basically did not want to draw into 2 Eidos. If I draw into 2 Eidos, I'm basically done for in terms of like having access to Eidos. But because my opponent just like Reincarnations and Present card right away, even though I take a little bit of life point damage, that's fine because I didn't draw into any extra copies of Eidos. And in fact, this was really good because I have the March and I have the Vanity's Fiend. So I add back the Domain of the Monarchs with Idea because you're sent to the graveyard, and then my opponent scoop phases. Now, let's say that my opponent Heavy Dust Storms me when I activate March and when I activate Domain. I mean, that's still fine because he basically, I mean, he can search out things with the Candina next turn, but I'm going to be able to start rolling. Since when I summon the Vanity's Fiend, he can't special summon out the Lycoris. He can special summon Lycorises or Lilybells. So he's not able to poke me, and he's not able to deal burn damage. And when he summons the Lycoris, it's just going to get run over by, at this point, a 2400 Kaiser Voss Raider or a 2400 Vanity's Fiend. But yeah, as you can see, like, just off that, my opponent knew like to just scoop. Now this duel, on the other hand, is a little bit different because I'm playing against dinos. So my opponent opens up as good as dinos can open up, and that's just basically Tyranno plus like any dinosaur and like fodder for Tyranno, which in this case was a Trick Clown. So what I do here is that I Stormforth. So I special summon Cards of Australia because my opponent basically cannot react to it because it's just a special summon effect, sort of like Cyber Dragon. And then I immediately go for Stormforth, and then I tribute his Tyranno and the Cards of Australia for Erebus. And I can immediately go for a Darkest Diablos, spin the Tyranno from the field, and then add a domain, attack for a bunch of damage, and then finish it off by tributing the Darkest Diablos. Now, the reason why I did this was because I wanted to get rid of a card out of his hand, which I think was the Raiden, and also I set up my Darkest Diablos in the grave in case I can tribute summon on my opponent's turn, and if he was to remove my current lock, so to say, I still have the idea and the Cards of Australia. So he draws into Foolish Burrow, which was pretty lucky because he sends the Strudel, so immediately I thought, well, he's going for Black Rose, but he actually didn't. So he summons Overraptor, and he goes for Pill, Tyranno, Bookman's my Erebus, but my effect is still in play, and he Trick Clowns. And I guess that's fine. So here he makes Tornado Dragon to pop my domain, and I immediately go for Prime Monarch because he already used the effect of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, even though that doesn't really matter. But the other really important thing is that Prime is not treated as a trap card, so it's not going to be able to be destroyed by Tornado Dragon. The other thing is, if he made something like Lagia or Dolka, this is basically a threat in the graveyard because it's a free monster that I'm able to get every single turn. And if I'm using its effect now, I can basically use it on my next turn. So I banish the Stormforth because I have an idea in my hand, and then I can basically get it back from the banished zone. So I draw it into Frost Blast, and that couldn't be like a better draw because this card was basically dead in the fact that like it wasn't like a proactive card, like it wouldn't do anything on the field right now, but it was good because I could discard it with Erebus. So I idea Eidos, and then now I basically tribute summon for Erebus, and now 3 separate effects are going to go off. So idea, Erebus, Diablos, and my opponent would basically have to chainlink for Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. And the reason for this is, the reason why this would be really bad, is because even if he book of him with my Erebus effect would still go off, since the cost, quote unquote, is when the card is tribute summoned, and then the effect just basically goes off like, if this card is tribute summon, cost, and then you can send 2 Monarch spells and trap cards, and if you do, shuffle shuffle a card, right? So unless my opponent like stopped me from sending the Monarch spells and trap cards to the graveyard, the effect would go off regardless. So I immediately shuffle back his monster, and then I'm just basically to be over for free, and I still have the Monarch Stormforth in hand. So that's basically how you want to play this matchup. Stormforth is a very, very crucial card because it's one way to out the Tyranno, and also make sure you sort of like chain block the Tyranno in the way that you try to mitigate as much damage as possible. And yeah, those were basically the 2 replays that I wanted to highlight. So that was 8 minutes for 2 replays. Wow. Now let's go straight into deck. So I'm just going to highlight each card and tell you like the role of the card, and try to swiftly move on through my deck. So 2 Darkest Diablos, good card. This card is really, really good. You can use it for draw power, and you can use it like the ability to special summon itself from the graveyard is really, really valuable because it helps you like chain block. And also not being able to be targeted or tributed makes it just really, really appealing to run in general. And this card just helps you rack up so much damage because you're playing a lower big Monarch count, but you have a 3000 beat stick that you can summon out for free. 3 Erebus, the most essential Monarch in the deck, basically how we are going to be able to play our grind games, constantly shuffling our opponent's cards. Is really, really good. Going first, ripping a card of their opponent is really good. Being able to add itself on our opponent's turn is also really good, because if we draw into a quote-unquote dead Monarch spell or trap, we can easily just pitch it and add back the Erebus. And the card is just phenomenal in general. 1 Aether because we unfortunately only have 1. And I'm not playing Kraz or Mega Caius in this particular list because I think Darkest Diablos is just better than those 2. and also I'm side decking the Kraz. But the problem with the problem that I have with Caius is that Caius is really really bad going first. Like Caius is extremely bad going first because the ability to like its effect to banish something, it's like you have to do it. Like you can't choose not to use the effect. It's a mandatory effect. So if the opponent, like if I don't control like a back row that I can banish, I'm gonna have to banish the card itself, and that's just like really really bad. So I decided not to play Caius because it's a card that's only good going first. Something like Stalos is arguably much better than Mega Caius because it's a card that's good going first or second, getting free information and also being a solid Monarch card is really good. The problem is that Stalos is a fire type, which sort of has bad synergy with Allure of Darkness. However, it's a good trading target, and you can always add the Stalos with the Erebus if the Erebus and the Thessalos are both in the graveyard. So you could argue that running Thessalos is good, but in this particular case, I was like, I'm not going to run any of those two. I'm just going to run the four best Monarchs. And then the other quote-unquote Monarch is Vanity's Fiend. Now, even though it doesn't have Monarch stats, it's just a good floodgate. This card is a floodgate. When you play Vanity's Fiend, do not be greedy with the card, and don't try to like summon Vanity's Fiend and then like pop off on top of that, because it's gonna work really really bad in your favor. Just play a steady game with Vanity's Fiend, constantly like put your opponent at a disadvantage and try to build up your own advantage, setting up things like your prime. If you draw into escalation, do that. You can even like summon the domain. I mean, not summon, but like activate the domain, because at that point your Vanity's Fiend becomes even stronger if you're trying to beat over opponent's monsters, because the Vanity's Fiend gains 800 attack and goes 3200, so that's pretty solid. 3 cards of Raider. This is probably my favorite quote-unquote tribute for the monster. The reason for this is because the card is basically a Psycho Dragon that's also a dark type monster, and when it destroys something it gains attack, but when it's destroyed the monster loses attack. So it makes it really really appealing because the card is able to snowball really really well, and also because it's level 5, you can not only use it for a special summon, like for its special summon ability, but you can tribute it to basically have your domain lock online. And this card is like pretty good against Strixas because a 1900 beta that's on the field that has the potential to grow and also shuts off your opponent's extra deck is really really good. So that's the main reason I run the Cards of Raider. 3 Eidos, 3 Idea. These are sort of like the best squires to play. People mess around with Mithra and Landrobe and whatever. I mean, those cards are not bad, but like unless you're making like Rainbow Monarchs where you play like all these kinds of attributes, I'm just basically playing quote-unquote Chaos Monarchs. I'm not playing any Chaos cards, but my entire deck is light and dark, and that's all I need. Essentially, that's like all the cards that I need is just light and dark monsters. So yeah, the Eidos is good because it special summons out the idea, so this allows you to grind extremely well, but also because when the card is normal special summon, you get an additional tribute summon, which is really really important. And then Idea is just really good because she special summons out Eidos, and then she's basically, she allows you to add cards that are banished. And that's just very, very crucial because adding back a banished Stormforth can be the difference between winning a game and losing a game. Stormforth is one of your outs. And as soon as you can get access to Stormforth, the better it is for you. And even if the card is banished, it's good because then you can basically add it back with Idea. So you want to keep the Stormforth running in circulation. For draw spells, we have the 3 Allure of Darkness and the 2 Trade-In. You could argue that Trade-In is a little bit better in this deck because we have 6 targets, and for the most part, they all interact with in the graveyard one way or the other. I mean, like, Erebus can add back the 8 that's in the graveyard, but for the most part, I'm just using the Trade-In to send the Darkest Diablos to the graveyard, or the Erebus. That's my my main target, which is why I'm only playing 2 copies of the card. Since opening up these cards, opening up these cards is fairly easily, it's fairly easy, I would say. So yeah, I'm only playing 2 Trade-In. I don't necessarily want to open up multiple copies of Trade-In because like it's so specific in the fact that it's a level 8 card, like it requires a level 8, whereas Allure of Darkness is any dark monster. So that's the main reason I'm playing 2. One for one, this card allows you to OTK. There is a combo. I mean, if you play Monarchs, you should know how the combo works. But basically, the end board is like 2 Erebuses and an Aether, and that's like 8,400 damage, which is just enough to OTK. But not only that, the combo, you can further enhance the combo with Darkest Diablos, because it gives you that extra 3,000 damage. So I just like the 1 for 1 in this specific list, because if I draw it along with Darkest Diablos, I can basically pitch it, summon Idea Eidos, and then just snowball from there. One Pantheism because it's a one phenomenal card, gives you access to Domain, Tenacity, any card that you need. It's good sometimes to just reveal 3 Tenacity and add back and add the Tenacity and then add a Stormforth, since it's a more consistent way to add Stormforth. So, I mean, obviously you can search it with Tenacity, but this way is also fairly consistent if you can get the Pantheism in the graveyard. I'm not playing Foolish Burial Goods because that's sort of like the card that I say, it goes in Rainbow Monarchs where you play like all these different attribute type cards, and you'd play the Foolish Burial Goods to send a Pantheism or something like Prime, but yeah, I'm not playing that card. 3 Tenacity adds anything that we want. Slightly less good. I mean, it's good when we have access to like Majesty's Fiend in the main deck. The card becomes really, really good, but we are playing Vanity's Fiend instead because it's just a more win conditioning type. It's just a win condition card. It's a good floodgate. One Foolish Burial sends out Diabolos. That's our main target, but in scenarios there are certain scenarios where we can send something like the idea to add a banished card, or we can send an Erebus to add it to the hand by pitching a random Monarch spell trap card. So this essentially has like so many uses in the deck. It's actually just ridiculous how good the card is. One Frost Blast. Playing the Frost Blast just because I can use it multiple times in a turn since it's not a hard once per turn. So I can, for example, use its effects in the graveyard to banish it along with a different Monarch spell trap, pop a back row, because it targets for cost, and that's just really important. It targets for cost. And then I can, like, for example, add it back with Idea when Idea is sent to the graveyard, and then use its effect like once more to pop another back row, and when it goes to the graveyard, I can use this effect once more. So, in theory, this card can allow you to destroy 3 back row instead of just 2, but it's a little bit more costly, so to say. So, but I just like it because it's a card that it's a Monarch Spell Trap card that synergizes with your Erebus. The one Stormforth, basically your main owl, 1 March to just protect your monsters, 2 Return. Return is slightly less good in this particular list because you're playing less targets for it. The only targets that you're playing are Aether, Erebus, and you're gonna be, your first target is gonna be the Aether, and then your second target is gonna be the Erebus, and that's the only reason why you even play the card. You're not playing Krazin, you're not playing Caius, you're not playing the Stalos, etc. So, yeah, 2 Return. The other copy I usually just send it to the graveyard, and it becomes like a card I use for currency, just to like move it around from like deck to grave, from grave back to the deck, etc. So, 3 Domain, our main floodgate, basically locks our opponent's extra deck. 1 Escalation, just because this card allows us to, let me check what time we're on, allows us to play on our opponent's turn, and that's just really, really important, since the fact that we can add Erebus on our opponent's turn, and then like Escalation to tribute summon, we can then like tribute summon the Erebus and then spin a card out of our opponent's hand. So basically, this card, although like I'm not playing the Erupt, which is just a solid like skill drain floodgate, that's also searchable, with Escalation, the reason why this card is good is the ability to allow you to play on your opponent's turn. So yeah, and also it's a good card to just send to the graveyard in case you don't draw into it. Even though you're only playing 1 copy of it, you sort of want to hard draw this card over searching it. And the times that you do search it, it's very, very specific scenarios where you'd want something like Stormforth, Escalation, and Aether. So yeah, and then the 2 Prime. In the previous build, I think at one point I was playing like Foolish Burial Goods and Mouthful's Fusion. I was playing only 1 Prime, but in a deck like this, you sort of want 2 Prime, because the first Prime you're going to send to the graveyard, and then that's where you're going to be using to special summon yourself from the graveyard. As for the extra copy of Prime, that's sort of the card that you want to set, and the card that you want to activate to basically shuffle 2 Monarch spells and trap cards, and then draw a card. So basically you run out of resources much slower. So yeah, that's basically the main deck. I'm pretty happy with where the build is right now. The only cards that I would have to potentially like revisit is trade in. For everything else, I'm pretty happy with the ratios. For the side deck, it's really up to personal preference. I'm playing Jinzo because I like Jinzo. I'm also playing the Majesty's Fiend and the Karaz as like my quote-unquote light targets, but it really depends. It's up to you whether you want to play these cards or not. It stops hand traps and like monster effects in general, and this is just good to like pop stuff. 3 Trap Eater because Trap Eater gets rid of Floodgates, and then the 3 Call by the Grave because it stops our opponent from using hand traps, and then the 3 copies of Twin Twister. I could easily side out the copies of Twin Twister, and I would actually prefer to add something like Shed Ride, because the good thing about Shed Ride is that it's sort of like a Maxi, and Monarchs love Maxi. Like, Monarchs straight up love Maxi. So having a Maxi type card, not only once you have like your domain lock on the field along with the Shed Ride, it just makes it like really tough for your opponent, because not only are they not able to use their extract, but then every time they add a card from deck to hand, you're going to be getting a free card, and free cards in Monarchs is just like it's just like so stupid. If the opponent is stupid enough to play through the Shed Ride, you're just going to like add up so many cards from your deck to your hand by drawing. Like, you're going to draw so many cards that you just draw into like any problematic board that they are able to put to you, and you just break it so easily. So I just like the 3 Shed Ride in the side deck. So yeah, that's basically my current Monarch list, domain Monarch list using Darkest Diablos. I think the deck is pretty good. I have an even number of tribute summon monsters to tribute fodder monsters, and don't forget that Darkest Diablos can also be tribute summoned. I mean, it's like a really crappy way of doing it, but worst case scenario, you can like Idea Eidos tribute summon for Darkest Diablos, and you have a tribute summon monster, I think. Yeah, you have a tribute summon monster that cannot be targeted, cannot be tributed, and your opponent does not have access to the extra deck. So, now that I'm thinking about it, that's actually like pretty good. That's actually pretty good. Like, an Erebus, even though you didn't take a card out of your opponent's hand, but like an Erebus that cannot be targeted, that's just whew. So yeah, that's my Monarch list. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.